everybody, it's Tom. Welcome to the first Tuesday Talk of 2020. We're going to have a great year, and I wanted to spend a few moments today talking a little bit about some things that are going on now, but also focusing on what I want us to be thinking about in the year 2020 as our goals and the changes that are coming down the pike. So number one, let's talk about something we've been working on for quite some time, and that of course is creating a better work culture, or a better work climate for you, what I call a just culture. And several months ago, beginning last summer, we sent out a survey to all of you in child welfare. About 2,000 responses came back in, and we have gotten the organizational results, or the results of the COHA, the Comprehensive Organizational Health Assessment. We've gotten those results back in, and we sent them all out to you. And I think we're going to send it out again because we want you to look at these results, see what they say about your work climate, about how things are in this organization, and give us feedback and give each other feedback, and think about what you can do in your office to improve the climate and the culture. So we'll be working on that, of course, in conjunction with the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute over the next couple of years, but we need feedback on it, so I encourage you to read that because it really is the basis for our multi-year project to address the climate and culture of this organization. So, what are we going to do for 2020? Well, some of it, of course, involves culture and climate. And in fact, I've kind of written down really 8 core issues I want us to focus on. There may be others, and perhaps you have other suggestions, which I certainly want to hear. But let's just kind of kick it off. Number one, we want to continue to create an empowered, just culture in which frontline and county child welfare staff and other staff have discretion and the psychological safety to make hard calls. So what does that mean? It means that we as a state office need to be equipping you with the tools, the information, the strategies, and the discretion necessary to make that call at the front line. And when you have that, we need to be able to back you up on the decision you make, because we know that every choice we make in this organization has a trade-off. We balance the need of the child to be with family versus the child's safety. Of course, safety takes priority. We balance the needs of a family on food stamps or Medicaid versus making sure that they have provided us with proper documentation so we can avoid giving benefits to those who don't qualify and avoid fraud. So we know there are trade-offs, but we also know that by empowering you with what you need to do your job, we can make better decisions. Secondly, we want to make sure that we are improving our customer service, especially in our eligibility and our Office of Family Independence. So we have already been working, of course, towards simplifying a lot of the forms, making sure that people are going to have better access to apply for Medicaid and food stamp benefits, either online or in the office. We want to make this process simpler. But I know this is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, for us during this year, because in order to make things simpler, we're going to have to go through a process that may seem at times a little frustrating. There's going to be changes, etc. But please stick with it, because I think in the end, your job will be made much simpler by these changes. Number 3, we're going to do our best in this year to demonstrate that we have done everything possible with regard to our Kenny A consent decree. We, of course, have been under this consent decree that required us to improve our child welfare system in Fulton and DeKalb counties for about 15 years now. I've been really watching this and involved either tangentially or directly from the very beginning. And I have seen myself, and everybody I've talked to in the child welfare community has seen vast improvements. And I think we're approaching the finish line, and I want to make sure that we cross that finish line, hopefully within this coming year. Number 4, we really need to develop an extended family preservation policy and practice. As you know, with the coming of the Family First Prevention Services Act, we have more opportunity by keeping children out of formal state custody to use these 4E funds to serve those children in their communities. But I think that's also going to take us looking at how we are supporting relatives. So for example, instead of placing a child in foster care and then placing with a relative, what can we do to have a voluntary agreement in which a relative is caring for a child, keeping that child close to his or her school, community, friends, and yet we are supporting that family through benefits, child care, etc. I think this is something we're going to make a real strong push on this year, and I believe that it's going to be a great boon for the children we serve and really allow us to take the best advantage of Family First. We want to make sure that we're serving those families as well as addressing the needs of the parent that caused the child to need to be somewhere else for a while, but we want to do this within the family circle, so to speak. And I think especially our State of Hope program and the work that we are doing to develop those community resources will help us. Number 5 on my list of things to do in 2020 is making sure that we're continuing to improve our centralized intake for child welfare and our data. So we are looking, of course, at projects right now and working on projects that will help us integrate more data on the front end so that when we get a call about a child, that we can understand that family's situation and can better address that family's needs and also triage that situation better. But there are more things we can do as we work along the more that we can know about a family's situation with whom we're involved in terms of education, health, prior involvement with other systems, the better we can serve that family. The next is going to be, I think, doing some reforming of our foster care system. I believe that we're going to have probably a major multi-agency and also effort that also involves some of our foster parents and our providers. And I think we're going to see that we're going to have the opportunity during the coming year and more to really look at how our foster care system works, to see where we can improve it, to see what we can do in terms of making sure that all foster parents, whether they're in CPA foster parents or DFCS foster parents, are treated fairly and equally, make sure that we are expediting such things as home studies. So I think that'll be coming down the pipe. Next, of course, specifically is going to be building additional capacity, especially through the Family First Prevention Services Act, for addressing the needs of families with substance abuse issues, with mental health issues, both children and parents, and especially children with developmental disabilities. We are looking across the agencies and working with other agencies as well as our providers to see how we can look at things such as therapeutic foster care and respite care and services that could be accessed by parents without the need or the perceived need to place your child in state custody to get these services. We know that children are best served when they are in parental custody as long as they're safe there. And for many of these families, the question is not safety, it's a question of the need for that family to receive services. And finally, we're going to make sure this year that we continue and even improve our collaboration with the courts, especially our juvenile court system. I've been very proud of the work that our multidisciplinary Child Abuse and Neglect Institute has done in conjunction with the Committee on Justice for Children, the Office of the Child Advocate, the summit that we had this year with those organizations. We are continuing our court improvement project, our court improvement initiative rather, and what we want to do is make sure that we can go into court, can present the right evidence to the judge that can help everyone involved, the judge, the SAG attorney, the parent attorney, the child attorney, work together to achieve the best outcome possible for that child. So that takes collaboration. That is not something that can be dictated by fiat from this agency or from any other agency or any court. It's got to be a collaborative work, and I'm very excited about that. So those are sort of 8 things that are on my plate. I also want to mention in passing, just because it's going to be a central focus of the next few months. That, as you know, solution-based casework has been really the center of our practice model for several years now. And we have really focused on that center because we know that when we engage families through SBC, that we achieve better outcomes, because the majority of the time is that the family and the child we need to treat as one unit, and we need to make sure that we are not telling the family what to do, but we are working with the family to help them overcome their own barriers and their own obstacles to keeping their child safe and doing well. But we also know that we need to make sure that we create or at least emphasize the larger framework of our work. And so we are sort of focused again on making sure that we, as part of our comprehensive practice model, we focus on our intake processes, our assessment of safety processes, our situations in which we have decided that a child should not be reunited with the family because of severe abuse or neglect or even violence. Looking at how we move children to permanency, whether that permanency is back with the family or with a relative or with an adopted family, and sort of looking at that entire range of services. So I guess you might say, if SBC is our practice model, then we're putting additional flesh or additional really a flesh on the bones of the SBC framework. I think it's going to be a good year for that. I'll tell you that we've got 2 steering committees, one internal, which is DFCS, and one external. Foster parents, birth parents, youth, providers, legal and judicial stakeholders, all working on this comprehensive practice model. They're going to be meeting over the next few months, and we expect that by May this year we will have this just sort of, not, I think, augmented comprehensive practice model rolled out, really based upon the same principles we've had for quite some time, which is that safety comes first. Children are best treated when they can be kept safe by their parents. If not, we need to look at the local community and local relatives. And there are some children who simply we need to help find an alternative family, whether that's a relative or an adopted family. And we need to treat all of this as part of our role, not focusing on any one particular sector, but focusing on our entire work of keeping children safe, and when children can't be kept safe, helping them find safety, well-being, and permanency. So thanks, y'all. It's going to be a great 2020. A little bit of a long Tuesday talk, I guess, but y'all have a good time. See you next week.